Hi, I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. If you're looking to add horsepower to your Mustang, it's important to make sure you have the proper supporting mods in place before doing so. One area many people forget is going to be the cooling system. As you add more horsepower, you're also adding more heat under the hood. If you can't control that heat, horsepower is going to suffer. Best way to improve your cooling system is the high performance radiator. So today we're going to show you how to install this Mishimoto 3-row aluminum using our 2015 Mustang GT. This Mishimoto 3-row aluminum radiator is going to be a direct replacement for the factory radiator on all 2015 through 2016 GTs or GT350s. It'll work with both your manual or automatic transmission and adds a lot more coolant capacity over the factory radiator. While the Performance Pack Mustang does have a larger radiator from the factory, the Mishimoto is going to be an improvement even over that. Over a stock radiator, it has 129% more coolant capacity and 77% more than even your factory Performance Pack radiator. It's made a fully brazed aluminum core and TIG welded, and again, it's a direct replacement that will install using factory hardware. For this installation, you'll need a lift or a jack and jack stands, a 3/8 ratchet, 19mm socket, 1/4 inch ratchet, 10mm socket, 8mm socket, 7mm socket, channel lock pliers, needle nose pliers, small flathead screwdriver, and safety glasses. We're going to start by draining our cooling system. So we're going to remove the cap from our overflow bottle, then go underneath and drain it out. Now that we're underneath the car, we're going to remove the splash pan so we can drain the radiator. If Freddie's going to give me a hand, you got to get all these 7mm screws off and a couple clips as well. The petcock for draining the radiator is located on the passenger side. There's a little nipple here you can put a rubber hose on, make it a little bit easier to not make a mess when you're draining it. Okay, drain as much out as you can, and then we're going to move up top. While we're under the car, we're also going to disconnect the lower radiator hose and drain from this side as well. Now moving up into the engine bay, we're going to remove the radiator cover, the overflow bottle, and our cold air intake. Now we're going to move on to the tank. We'll take the bolts off of the bracket at the top. Freddie loosens the clamp to disconnect the hose that goes to the radiator. Disconnect our air fittings on the air raid. Now Freddie's going to disconnect the upper hose, and then we'll move on to the wiring harness for the fan. Again, make sure you have a drain pan in place because you'll probably get some fluid out of this as well. With the hoses disconnected, now we can move on to the radiator brackets themselves. 2 bolts on this side, 2 bolts on this side. Disconnect the condenser from the radiator, basically sliding up all 4 tabs and push the radiator back away. assembly. Now you can carefully remove the whole radiator assembly with the fan. With the radiator and fan out, we can remove these two screws here. That will allow us to remove the fan shroud from the radiator. A few more things we need to transfer over to our new radiator. We'll have to get the hose here that goes to our coolant tank, these two metal clips, and the two rubber mounts on the bottom. The clips, just grab a flathead screwdriver, work your way underneath, and slide them off. And the mounts on the bottom, simply slide off the bottom studs. Okay, now we're done with the factory radiator, so we can put it aside. Now, the only thing we have to do to the Mishimoto radiator before installation is take these two metal clips, put them over these openings here. This is to hold the electric fan on. We don't want to put the fan on now because this is a little bit thicker than the factory radiator. It'll be tight to get it in. So we'll put the radiator in place first, then install the fan second. Before we put the radiator in, we're going to reinstall the rubber mounts. Put them down on the frame on both sides. And now we put the radiator into place. And make sure the bottom studs of the radiator go into those mounts we just put in place. And we want to get the condenser and get all the brackets from the condenser to slide up into grooves on the front of the Mishimoto, just like the factory. And these brackets will be a little bit of a tighter fit than stock, so make sure it is seated all the way down. Okay, now we're going to put the fan down into place. Again, line it up with the lower clips and the two screws in the top to hold it in place. Now we can reinstall the stock hardware. Now we can mount a coolant tank back to the shroud. And don't forget to plug your fan back in. Now we can install the upper brackets. Slide these over the upper mounts, then line up just like the factory. Mishimoto includes this seal. It's going to mount on the front edge of the radiator. Simply push it on. Okay, now we can start connecting our hoses. I'm going to start with the hose that goes from the radiator to our overflow tank. It was a little tight to get on. If it is in your way, just remove the air box to give you more room. But if you're careful, you can sneak it in. Now we can install the upper hose. And now we can reinstall our cold air intake before we move back onto the car. Don't forget to plug the mass air sensor back in. Once under the car, we're going to start now by reconnecting the lower radiator hose. The Mishimoto comes with a magnetic bolt in place of your normal drain cock. Before you go to fill it though, just make sure it's tight. You don't have to crank it, but make sure it's good and snug. Okay, now we can reinstall our lower splash pan. We get the splash pan back in place and lined up and reinstall the factory hardware. Now we're ready to fill up the system. We're going to be using the Mishimoto liquid chill coolant, which is a synthetic 50/50 coolant that comes ready to install right in the bottle. What you're going to do, fill up this tank first. You have to start the car, let it warm up. Once the thermostat opens and it starts sucking coolant down, then we got to keep filling the tank. All right, now with the overflow tank full, what we're going to do is start the car, put the heater on high speed, let it warm up so the thermostat actually opens, and we'll top off as necessary. Once your coolant system's filled up, you can reinstall the radiator cover and reinstall all the factory push pins. You want to make sure if you did replace your antifreeze, get rid of your original antifreeze in a responsible manner, and your installation's finished. The Mishimoto 3-row aluminum radiator is a great choice for any Mustang, but especially if you're running a power adder such as a supercharger or a turbo, that adds a lot more heat to the system. As you saw, it's a direct replacement for the factory radiator, and it's a pretty easy installation. I'd say give yourself about 2 to 3 hours, be back on the road in no time.